Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ramadan Mubarak. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the Healthy Muslim in Ramadan. I'd now like to explore with you the importance of sleep. You might say, in Ramadan, that's the one thing we don't get. Because we don't get much of it, it's extremely important to understand what sleep is about and when we can take advantage of times when we can catch up. Now, I need you to understand the physiology of the body and how important sleep is for it. We don't need to go to textbooks, we just have to read the Quran. And it says, and we made your sleep to be rest to you, and the night to be a covering. So sleep is meant to be nocturnal sleep. We're not meant to turn night into day. We're not meant to be up through the night and sleeping through the day. Now, why is this? It's very important to know. The body has a gland in the brain called the pineal gland, which secretes a hormone called melatonin. People who are totally blind, cannot perceive light at all, have a very interesting form of difficulty in sleeping. They have a 25-hour day waking sleep cycle. So their day is not 24 hours, it's 25 hours. And absolutely regularly, they go through phases of insomnia because each day their sleeping cycle gets advanced by 1 hour. So obviously at intervals they get very confused. One night they go to bed at 9, and that's fine. Next night it's 10, next night it's 11, next night it's 12. And so on, until they're wide awake through the night. They can only get to sleep at 9 in the morning, which of course they're having problems doing because they've got to live a normal life like the rest of humankind. So they get insomnia until their sleep cycle gets back to normal again. And then it's abnormal again. For a long time, people didn't understand what was going on with the blind. Why are they awful sleepers with this chaotic sleep pattern? Then we gave blind people melatonin at the same time every night. Now remember, they can't see light, so they just took a tablet. They slept like a dream, no problem. They went to sleep an hour after the tablet and had no problems at all. Totally corrected the sleep cycle problem. So why do we have such a curious relationship with sleep? Many people have sleep disorders. There's a fortune spent on sleeping tablets, on advice channels, on gizmos, on everybody's moaning they can't sleep. A clue lies in what we discussed about the life of the Prophet, peace be upon him. The Prophet woke at tahajjud. He might take a nap, and then he was up at suhoor. Suhoor, he was wide awake, prayed Fajr, and that was a good time. That was the time the companions met, and everybody was happy, and it was not time for work yet. And after a good time chatting, exchanging news, some sohbat, some discussions, he went to his family, had breakfast, if there was any food, and went on with his day. He did not go back to bed because the light was up. They didn't have artificial light. They had to use the light of the day for their work, and they had the dark of their night for the sleep. But man, in his infinite genius, has invented electric light. So we can have light whenever we want it. Many people have no idea when it's Maghreb. You know, you have to have some sort of timer on your iPad or iPhone to give you an idea that it's getting dark outside, because we live in an environment which is totally artificially stimulated. The Prophet, peace be upon him, between Asr and Maghreb, he was with his family. After Maghreb, he had a meal. After Isha, he went to bed. He slept through the night. He might have woken for tahajjud, but he'd already had 2/3 of the night in sleep. He was well rested. He was not a Margaret Thatcher who insisted on living on 3 hours sleep. He understood the importance of sleep and slept. And many people have not understood this about the wisdom of the Prophet, showing us how we have to use our time management, not just for our energy, but also for our sleep. So maybe I'm being nasty to how useful it is to have artificial light. After all, we can extend working hours, we can extend production. That's to the benefit and wealth of the nation. Then more people get fed. Hospitals can stay open later. Of course, I understand the benefits of extended time. But I want people also to be conscious about what it's doing to us. We are like the blind man in reverse. Instead of finding that we've gone to our natural biorhythm without melatonin, which is 25 hours, we're in chaos because we've got no biorhythm at all. We have no cues for sleep because we allow the television into our bedroom. And as long as you've got a blue light stimulus, melatonin will not get switched on. So like the blind man is given his tablet of melatonin, you're not going to get it. As a seeing person, your melatonin is when you switch the light out. But how many people go to bed and they've still got the light on, they're reading, they've got the television in the background, they've got noise. Of course they don't sleep. So in order for us to understand our physiology, we should use some of our time management in the service of sleep. Now this is difficult because we've already said that after Isha, after Maghreb, we're going to be praying. And it isn't a short time necessarily between Maghreb and Isha. And so you're going to slightly extend the time before you get to bed. But as soon as you come home, the first thing you have to do is to get a little bit of food into you, especially, as I said, the carbohydrate type food, which will help you get a little bit mellow. And darken your room. Remember that lovely description, the night to be your covering. The darkness of the night is so beautiful. There's a lovely poem by an English poet called T.S. Eliot called The Four Quartets, and in it he says, "Let there be dark, for the dark shall be the darkness of God." And the dark is not something we should fear. It's something we should welcome, and we should welcome as a protection from Allah, as our body renews its energy for the day. Now, without sleep, we're in big trouble. Our brains are chemical factories, and without the chemical factory of sleep, our brains can't manage. The arrogant, driven person thinks he can drive himself past his sleep needs and is macho and pushes themselves on. What happens? They get depressed. Their ability to concentrate goes. A number of psychological things happen which are to his detriment. And you're not doing yourself any favors by trying to live on 3 hours sleep a night. As I explained in another program, in the United States, in the Great Depression, they had dance marathons where people would dance until they collapsed, and people in the audience would place bets. It was sadistic and horrible, but it showed that man without sleep is very quickly in deep trouble. There are some sleep conditions where sleep is impossible. There's a condition called malignant insomnia. I hate to tell you, but if you have malignant insomnia, you die. You might be doing everything else right, but your heart gives out. Sleep is necessary. Come back after the break and I'll tell you more. Thank you. Welcome back. You're returning to a discussion of what happens to people when they're sleep deprived. And sleep deprivation is not what's intended in Ramadan. Sleep deprivation, as I've explained, in its rare medical form of malignant insomnia, is lethal. Sleep deprivation is one of the hallmarks of torture, sadly rife in the world today. And torture is anathema, is absolutely haram to anyone who understands the majesty of another human being. To that level of cruelty is unthinkable. So to deprive someone of sleep, you might think you're being really clever because there aren't marks of harm on the body, but you can really seriously drive them mad. Allah does not intend to torture us in Ramadan. Allah loves us, and Ramadan is for our benefit. So, in order not to turn Allah into some sadistic monster, which of course we can do, because remember in the Hadith Qudsi it says, I am as you see me, and if our gaze is faulty, we will not see him as he is. And he intends us to sleep in Ramadan, but time management is crucial, and he who plans to fail fails to plan. You must plan your naps. In England, we're going to have a long fast. I was explaining that to be sleep deprived is seriously harmful for the body. In malignant insomnia, literally, you cannot survive. The heart will expire. Sadly, sleep deprivation is used as a form of torture. It's thought to be clever because there's no mark of harm on the body, but the harm to the individual is profound and long-lasting. Torture is, of course, anathema to any good-thinking person. So, when we are faced with Ramadan, we are faced, if you're in a country as we are, where the fasting time is quite long, the correlation of that is the sleeping time is quite short. So, on the analogy that he who plans to fail, fails to plan, you have got to be clever in your time management and look for the corners where you can sleep. Now, each person is going to come to their own solution because you have responsibilities during your day. You know that you have to work, you know that you have the responsibility for elderly people, for children, you have to get the meals cooked. There's a million things each human being has to do. But if you think you can manage 30 days with 3 hours sleep a night, by the time you get to the last 10 nights, when the quality of your prayer should be at its best, you will be exhausted. You will not be articulate. You'll be what I would call brain dead. So your body has rights over you. You have to plan when you're going to sleep, in order to completely make sure that the brain has got the energy, the neurotransmitter energy it needs for its most important function, which is prayer. The curious thing about melatonin is how sensitive it is to light. And if you can have a nap during the day, if you can get eye shades, if you can draw the curtains, if you can even just put a sheet over your head or something so that you don't see any light, you will sleep much more effectively for 40 minutes than you would if you failed to observe light deprivation. A lot of work has been done on power napping, as it's called, particularly in pilots who have to go across time zones and have to negotiate very professionally, because they have 600 people, their lives at stake in terms of flying a plane through the night. They have to be attentive. So how they sleep and how effectively they manage their sleep pattern is something that's part of a serious study. And it's been shown that if you have a power nap for 40 minutes, it's equivalent to 2 hours of full sleep. And that the improvement in performance of the pilot after that power nap continues for 4 hours. So a power nap of 40 minutes will give you 4 hours extremely good work. And for that reason, I was suggesting you should try, if it's possible, try planning your power napping at lunchtime. Of course, you're not eating because it's Ramadan, but before Zuhr prayer or just after. Strangely, I hate to tell you, that's when the Prophet Muhammad used to have his power nap. He knew all this stuff way before modern science caught up 1,000 years later. But what the Prophet definitely knew, he had, of course, greater energy than we did, but you cannot study his life and think that he was sleep deprived. He was not. He was careful not to waste time. And the main time waster, look at the corners of the day when you start coasting. And mostly it's when you've had your evening meal and you wander back home and you drift and mither and dither and don't do very much. Next thing you know, it's midnight. Oh, it's going to be Fajr at 4 o'clock. Oh, I'm not going to sleep enough tonight. What do I do? And you've messed up. So try and be conscious, because these rhythms are essential to get optimum performance. If you're an Olympic athlete, do you think these things are left to chance? The day of an Olympic athlete is programmed precisely. What he eats and when, how he trains and when, what foods he eats before what sort of training. And it's all sport specific. A person who's a sumo wrestler will have a completely different pattern to somebody who's a weightlifter, who again will have a completely different pattern to a long distance runner. It depends what you're going to do. But the science of understanding that when you sleep, when you rest, when you eat and what you eat, all of this is essential to maintain the optimum performance of your body. I'm back to my analogy of the Ferrari. When you put your toe on the accelerator of a Ferrari, it zooms. I've never actually been in one, but I've been told that's what happens. And they are a classy car, a really exquisite piece of engineering. If we take care to get the best of this amazing human body that we have been given as the vessel by which we discover our path to Allah and our knowledge of Allah, if we neglect our body, our vision of that path, our performance on that path, and our understanding at the end of it will be necessarily less. So it really is relevant to pay attention to these details with the same care that an Olympian will be really careful about having enough sleep and eating at the right time and exercising at the right time and so on. Now, sleep for the elderly is maybe not so important. Sleep for the young is crucial. One of the great tragedies of our young is that we've given them mechanical devices which are irresistible, called televisions, called computers, called iPads. What's even worse, we put these devices in their bedrooms. For good quality sleep, your bedroom should be where you sleep. You do nothing else there. You don't read, you don't play music, you certainly do not have light in that room for any purpose whatsoever. Just a little bit of light to enable you to walk in, then you turn it off. The room should be dark. Children should have a playroom in which they watch their television and their iPad and so on. That way, at least, as a mother, you'll have a slight clue that they're not watching television and they're not playing on their iPad all the way through the night, so that they're difficult to get up in the morning and getting lousy grades at school. But we've given them toys. We mustn't blame them for playing with them. Sleep for a child is absolutely essential for growth. Children who don't sleep properly are short and overweight. They don't produce growth hormone. They have food hunger because they have low energy, and the hormones of low energy make you reach for sugary foods because you think you'll get energy from those foods. They're depressed because they don't have the right hormones in their brain to give them energy. A child needs to have curiosity, initiative. He needs humor. He needs to be socialized. A child who's tired, who is depressed, is not going to do these things. This is all part of the growth of a child. And a mother's job is to ensure their child has enough sleep. Children during Ramadan need to sleep properly. Their requirement for fasting is a requirement of Islam. Requirement for prayer is adjustable, and the sleep is really essential for them. We can adjust a little bit, we can have power naps in the day, but many Christian schools are not that interested in giving Muslim kids power naps during Ramadan. So you might have some problems there. Sleep early, of course, is another secret. If you can get to sleep in your normal working day and working life soon after Isha prayer, you're much more likely to wake up at tahajjud. Surprise, surprise. If you wake up at tahajjud and you pray, you're more likely to eat a decent suhoor during that interval in which you have time to eat, and pray Fajr. So the wisdom of getting to bed early is very important if you don't consider Fajr as a prayer that you just do 2 sunnah and 2 fard rak'ahs and nothing else, and you do that fast asleep, wondering that you'll probably fall asleep in sujood. That shouldn't be the way you pray Fajr, which if you sleep properly, you won't. And you'll realize it is the cool prayer of the morning when you feel most peaceful and most happy. Please come and join us tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum.